My guy, how you doing?
Very well.
I just bumped into Pastor Simon at Fearless. You're the man of all men. You talk fathers. And you say dad is destiny, right?
Yeah, that is destiny for sure.
I do a podcast called Living Truthfully. And I'd love for it if you could come and we have that conversation with you. But you being a dad, how you are fathered, and how we should father.
I'll be very honored to do that. In fact, next week is Father's Week.
It's Father's Week. So
Father's Day will be on Sunday, so I'd love for us to do that. Yeah, for sure.
all right,
I'll be there.
Yes, thank you.
Papa was a rolling stone.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good whatever time it is, wherever you are. Welcome to Living Truthfully. My name is Amani Maranga, and I'm excited. I'm excited because of the man I have in studio today. I'll be telling you about him. But I want to say this, guys. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. Thank you for voting for us. We're waiting to hear how we've done on the Baker Awards, but thank you for all of you that have voted. Thank you so much for the feedback that you've given us. I will be sharing some of that feedback in today's episode. But Annie, I'm so grateful. My heart is full. You guys rock. Thank you, thank you, thank you. But now we're about to bring to a close. Papa was a rolling stone. And at the end of this season, I have the one man that should have been here all along, the one man that they call the man, the one man that is Simon, the man, Mbevi, in the house, in the flesh. Karibu, sir.
Asante, good to be here.
How
Man.
you doing?
I'm doing good, especially because it's Father's Day week. I'm excited about it.
It is Father's Day week. Let me tell you guys who this guy is. If you don't know the man, well, I'm going to read a bit about him from a book that he wrote, but it doesn't even say the half of what this guy is. But he's a founder and director of Transform Nations Initiative. And this is an initiative that is devoted to calling men, but now it's not even men anymore, because you're talking about, you have mothers of sons, you have, what's the program for women called now?
Eza, which is
Eza.
like woman enough, but woman enough is not feminine enough. So Eza, strong and supportive woman.
Does the idea of woman enough exist? Okay, don't answer that. Pastor Simon is the man behind the movement that is called Man Enough. Someone wrote about it this week. We'll talk about it. Someone wrote that nowadays when men introduce themselves to chicks, they say they've done man enough as a way of entitlement. That sasa yani mimi ni mwanaume wa kutosha kwa sababu nimefanya man enough. And it was a lady who was writing. Who wrote that, and she said that we need to check out the level of humility of these men who think they're entitled because they've done man enough. Mm-hmm. But I can't speak for the program. I was in the 1st battalion of Man Enough, the very first battalion.
That's right. That's a few years ago, man.
That's many years ago.
Yeah.
Was that 2010 or 2011?
I think it's 2011.
2011.
Yeah.
And we sat back and reviewed the material with you, and we were able to figure out some of what works and what doesn't work. I have a mark in Man Enough, and we'll talk about it. But Pastor S is also, you're a lawyer.
That's right. Practiced for a few years and then left. Just realized I wasn't my place.
You're the author of Boys to Men, which is a book about turning boys into real men. Ombi, Daddy's Destiny.
Yeah.
What are the others that I'm
There's
not?
Man Enough,
Man
there's
Enough,
Mothers of Sons, which I've co-authored with my wife, and then now there's Eza that we have co-authored as well. Which others? A few others. I think 12 books now.
12 books. Dude. You know, we used to have these conversations, and I think at the time you had not even written one. Or maybe Ombi. It was only Ombi.
Just Ombi. And I'd written something for youth as well. So those are the only ones I'd written.
12
sexuality and
now.
youth. Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're in the presence of greatness. I want to go straight into fatherhood, Pastor S. You're a father of 3.
That's right.
Their names.
The ones I know.
That is every man's problem right there. So there's Promise.
Yeah, Promise is my son. He's the only son. And then 2 daughters. There's Covenant. Modeu.
Yes.
And then there's Baraka Mumo. So those 2 girls, and then Promise Muro. Muro is peace in Kikamba. So
what does Baraka mean?
Well, Baraka is something close to Swahili, but also we use Baraka in Hebrew, in Swahili as well. But Baraka is Hebrew of, Baraka. Yeah.
And I didn't realize it until actually a while back that you don't spell it as Baraka.
Yeah.
The way we spell it in Swahili. You
Yeah,
spell
it's Baraka. B-E-R-R. Said R-S-C-A-H. There's actually a valley in Israel called Baraka Valley, which is a valley of blessing. I mean, that place, the whole place is dry, but that place never gets dry. So I think that's where I got it from.
How has your fatherhood journey been?
Well, that's a good question. I'd start with the way I was fathered, which is my dad died when I was 8 years old. So I know very little about him. But I remember a few things here and there that really impacted me. I remember him blessing us before he died, just a few weeks before he died. And he just spoke blessings over all of us. I remember a few things that we did together, like he used to love ugali. And maziwa mala. By that time, those days, we used to put this milk into a gourd, that. It was a real deal.
And then it ferments in the gourd.
Yeah, he used to love that. I loved it. So we used to eat that together and a few of other siblings. I mean, we're 10 of us. So, I mean, I would love this, but there were 1 or 2 others who loved it. My father believed in numbers, I should say. He had 2 wives, which was a trend then. And 20 of us. Wow. 10 from my mother, 10 from the other mother. He just believed in balance as well.
Well, that's one way to balance. Listen, Pastor Simon says if you're going to have 2 wives, give them equal number of children.
That's not what I'm saying.
Oh, that's what his father did.
That's what my dad did.
What is the impact?
That's really where it started.
Yeah.
I think my father and how he fathered us and the stories I hear about him because I knew very little.
Yeah.
And then him dying and me watching. He died and I was around and it was right at home. So
You said it was an accident, was it?
It was an accident. A bus just missed was trying to avoid some cows, our cows. They had gone into the road and my dad and my brother was trying to get them back into the gate, compound, and the bus just lost control and came for him.
Wow.
That's how he died.
I'm really sorry about that, man.
Yeah, but those are many years ago, but it affected me, until today I see some things about how I miss, I felt like my dad just quickly left me suddenly, no time to say bye-bye, I wasn't prepared. And that affected me for a long time because I used to think everyone was going to leave me suddenly. And so I became very clingy as a result, especially to people that were important to me. Our further experience does affect us, I've come to realize in life.
Why is that? People ask me, why do we make this father thing a big deal? That when someone leaves, when your father is not there, suddenly it sounds like a big deal. Why is the father presence a big deal?
It's because it's a big deal. I don't think we just make it. I mean, I talk to children, some who don't know their dads and some who know them, some who quit on them. And you look at their lives and it's definitely affected them. One of the things I got to learn not too long ago is that between 0 and 8, mothers, their presence in our lives are very important. There's a mother instinct. You're made in their tummy. You're born out of them. So there's a mother really in all of us, part of his flesh. Because of being in their womb. And we come out and they're taking care of us. And of course, they are so nurturing, holding us, breastfeeding us, speaking to us, that sweet voice. Nothing else can match that. So So between 0 and 8, a child, male or female, is very endeared to their mother. And that's biological, but it's also psychological. You feel like mom is the one who watches over you, takes care of you. When you cried, they picked you up. So mothers teach you trust, how to trust people in this life. They give you patterns of relationships. It's interesting that a lot of us relate the way our mothers related to us. I mean, when my kids were young, I would be there and I'm able and I could do a lot for them, and something would happen and they run straight to their mother's arms. And I'm there, and sometimes I would feel bad about it. I mean, I'm here, come to me. But it's just a thing. It's just a thing between 0 and 8.
It's because you're a beautiful wife. Your kids
well,
knew
that as well.
Who was better looking in the relationship.
But even, the hug to them is very different from my hug to them.
Yes,
mine is Bonnie and all of that. But she gets to hug them and they feel like, wow, I belong here. Yeah. So those are the first few years. But then after that, psychologically, every child has to draw away from their mother to figure out their own themselves. So becoming their own person, they have to move away. And part of the role of a father is actually to receive that child so they can understand themselves apart from their mother. Dad, if he's present, would be the only significant other besides the mother who would be there. So a different voice, a different hand, and that helps. Fathers sort of take you from your mother and introduce you to the world. Yeah, bring you to the world, make you know that you can perform, you can do something. So in that sense, they are really important. I remember one statement my father made, and I still remember it. What he said is, you can be a leader. He said it in passing, but I believed it. And actually, I remember after he died, I went back to school and decided I'll be number one from now on, because my father said I could be a leader. And I was for many years, because my dad said it. So just that power of a father's word, it's really a big deal. Really a big deal to many people. So we don't make it up. I think it's psychologically
it is a thing.
Yeah.
I can't explain it myself, but my father's story. I've talked about it.
Yeah.
Being brought up by a stepdad and not knowing my biological father. Now I'm like my stepdad and I are really cool. I mean, he's a guy I call dad. He's my father. He's a guy I identify with.
Yeah.
I named my son after him. But just that thing that there was a guy out there. Yeah. Who didn't choose me in a sense.
Yeah.
It affects you for some reason. It's not logical because I'm almost 40, Bana. I should have dealt with it by now. I should have.
Well, you're still young. I was talking to some men, some years ago, and I talked to them about this father thing. And I told them, I asked them, I told them about my story, about how my music teacher gave me a hug, and it was like the first fatherly hug I had ever received. I think my dad, I don't remember him hugging me, but I was too young. Maybe he did. But it was the first time in Form 1 that this teacher hugged me, and it felt so good. I went and sat somewhere and cried. Wow. I mean, it felt like a transfer of masculinity almost. And he had shaved his beards, and those who don't understand, then there are little pricky things after that. Yeah. So I remember that pressing against my smooth skin and feeling like literally something was being transferred to me. But it was just that I had longed for that fatherly hug. So I told these guys that story, and I told them, hey, by the way, partly I was joking, partly I was serious. I told them, after this talk, I'll wait here, and if you really want a father hug, like you wanted your daddy really to hug you, and he never did, I'll wait here. There was this dude, he was like 60-something years.
Wow.
And he was huge. I remember it because, he almost broke my little...
You guys have never seen Pastor Simon, eh? Everyone else is huge.
So this guy was big, and he came and hugged me and picked me up. At some point, I wasn't even, my toes were hanging.
Yeah.
He just lifted me up, and it felt so good for him. Like 10 minutes, he was still hugging me and crying. crying like a baby. Wow. And he said, wow, that felt so good. And he told me that his daddy left them when he was like 7 years old. And he said he had carried that thing until 60 something. And suddenly he felt like something rolled away from him. So this thing is a thing, as you're saying. It's actually a big thing. Psychologically, it's a big deal. And we just need to understand our father's story and how it has affected who we've become.
Pastor Simon, I have a question for you. In your book, Dad is Destiny, you describe the first time you were initiated into being a father. I identify with it because I went through it as well. So I want to read for guys a bit, just an excerpt from your book. Mm-hmm. So the book is called Dad is Destiny, The Difference a Father Makes by Simon Mbevi. And he calls this is in chapter 1, he calls it the initiation. Mm-hmm. And so he says, the experience is now when, his wife is in labor. And he says, it was a sweet and sour experience. It was frustrating, to say the least, to see my woman in intense pain and not being able to do something about it, except to rub her back and just be there. That is not how men are wired. We are born to solve problems, to fix the issue, to save our women. I momentarily hated the nurse and the doctor for passively watching my wife walk in the valley of the shadow of death. After many silent prayers, and what seemed to me as forever, the baby popped out. The passive, in quotes, nurses and doctors finally swung into action. I like that part, action. Mm-hmm. At that moment, I forgot about the woman. She had fulfilled her destiny. I turned my attention to the little girl, my daughter. Wow, my very own daughter. I felt some emotions I'd never felt that strongly. Love, pride, gratitude, insane joy, and other related emotions. Men take time to figure out what emotions they experience. I really related to this.
Yeah.
Because I was in the delivery room when my firstborn daughter was born.
Yeah.
Do you remember that day for you?
I do. As I explained there, eventually to be able, the pain was there, my wife was going through all of that, but to know that I've been born as a father, because I was born the same time.
That's when fatherhood starts for you.
Yeah. My daughter was born and I was born into fatherhood.
Yes.
And that's why I call it initiation. To me, it was just feeling like, wow. And as I said, it was such an illogical thing and feeling that finally there is someone who is named after me. This is my seed. That just felt awesome. So it was good in one sense, but it was also overwhelming in another. I just thought, this little thing will look up to me for the rest of my life. Do I have what it takes? I think it's a question men never
old is she
overcome. She's now going to be 18 later this year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she's becoming an adult. I was looking at her the other day, tried to hug her and lift her off the ground, and I had a backache after that. And I thought, who is your dad? I thought you were a little girl just the other day. But just the joy of seeing that girl become a woman, to me, it's just incredible.
I think what's incredible is that she has survived 18 years of your parenting. But, my daughter is turning 12 on Sunday.
Wow. Yeah.
And so I feel the same because I feel like she's survived 12 years of my parenting.
Of you're trying to figure out, especially some of us who are not, fathered as much. Yeah. We are trying to figure out a lot of these things.
And then I didn't have any female siblings, so you were lucky. You had a sister. You had an older sister at least.
Yeah, I had 4 of them older.
4 of them older, and I know. I think I met one, and at least I know you have a close relationship with them, a fairly close relationship with them. I had no reference, how to bring up a daughter.
Yeah.
Well, the reason I brought this up is because of the delivery room. You were in the delivery room.
I was.
Were you there for all your 3 children?
I was. I would take a break for a few minutes, come back. I was, but the last one was the most traumatic because the labor took longer.
Yeah.
And I remember at some point my wife said, "Yeah, I think I'm dying." Now that's very scary for a man.
Wow.
So I just told her, "You better not die. I'm going to die with you." I think that scared her back to life. But I was there for the three of them. And I think for me, it was not only the experience of receiving the baby and being there when the baby arrives for their arrival, but also just to be with my wife. For the first time, it was more for the baby.
Yeah.
I think later I began to realize that this means a lot to my wife. So I really want to do it for her as well.
That's my problem. That right there is my problem.
Yeah.
I was there in the delivery room for both of my children.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't do it again.
Because of a trauma.
It is so traumatic. It is so traumatic.
But you know, part of it is it also prepares you as a man. Because you've got to be able to be comfortable with blood if you're going to grow up as a man. That it's okay, and a few other things, and be able to talk through them. What I realize for a lot of men, why this is very traumatic, is because you never talk about it. You just live there, and you're going through these thoughts and what you've seen, and you're not talking to anyone. The lady, everybody has attention on her, so she will talk about it, but the men, they just keep it. Because I remember the first time I was quiet for like 2 weeks. I wasn't talking much, but not necessarily for anything too bad that I saw, but just because I didn't know how to process my emotions. So eventually when I talked to someone and we processed it, I now realize why a lot of men struggle is because you have no one to debrief with. And you see, even an accident, you need someone to debrief you after you go through it.
How do I debrief? Listen, help me here. Let's debrief me. How do I debrief what I just watched?
Yeah.
I feel like, first, it is my fault. Mm-hmm. This is happening.
Yeah.
I
For her.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It is my fault. It is me and my greedy self. Look at what it has done. Look at what it has done.
Your love for pleasure now is bringing pain to
someone else's
person.
daughter. You know? I mean, it's... And then obviously, I don't know if, and this is an adult show, so feel free.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's the challenge of, going back to intimacy, after that.
Yeah.
You know?
But you see, part of it is the debriefing. But also there's a way that men are prepared to stand more on one side and not on the other, unless they want to.
It didn't make a difference to me.
It didn't make a difference.
Didn't make a difference. Man.
Yeah. So for that reason, I mean, there's some people who maybe this is going to be really... There are people I say, if you don't feel ready for it, don't do it. Of course, your wife may not forgive you for that. But if you don't feel ready and you feel like this is going to be crazy, don't do it. But if you've gone through it and you've left traumatized, I think there's a debriefing that you need to do. Just get a therapist, shrink, to talk with you through it, just like any other experience. Even the wife, I mean, our wives sometimes go through a postpartum depression because of some of the things they go through. So and yet they were going through it themselves. So it's a good conversation to have with your wife, and if necessary, have with someone else.
I saw off sex.
Yeah.
Obviously not for long, but
that's how men are made.
Yeah, I was like,
by the way, it may be good for the women because then you keep off for a little while as they recover. By the time you recover, they have recovered. So it might be good for you as well.
But you know what I identify with as well is when Modoni came, when my daughter was born, I felt that overwhelming feeling of love and wanting to protect this child. And I knew at that moment my job would be to protect her for the rest of her life. I knew that. I was very clear.
Yeah.
I had a different feeling for my son though. I felt proud. My son, I felt just a sense of pride, I felt like Mufasa, lifting Simba.
A little warrior here.
Exactly. Well, why would that be, where I have this different feelings?
I think it's both biological, psychological, and cultural. as well. But it's both. You cannot divorce them. I think just seeing your little girl and how beautiful and sweet she is, you feel like, I want to die for this little thing. I want to protect them. But for your son, you feel like there's an energy there. He's going to be a protector as well. So you feel like you have a buddy, like you have a fellow soldier.
Exactly.
That has been born. And I'm saying it's both biological and everything, but cultural as well. Because that's how we relate culturally to girls. And anybody would. I mean, every girl wants to be protected. You want to feel like you want a man who is going to make sure you don't get harmed. And you're going to die protecting them. But for your son, you want to say, let's go fight together. That's why I always say every man needs a woman to die for and a man to go to war with. And if necessary, die with. But that's just how it is. And part of it is your daughter is going to need you in those ways. I mean, my daughter today comes and feels you're strong for me, you can protect me, and it's psychological. I mean, if you were left somewhere with women who are maybe even stronger than you because they've been to the gym and done a lot of things, they still want to feel like you're a protector. It's a psychological thing. I was somewhere the other day, I give you a story. I was in an airport somewhere, and then intercom comes on, and they begin to say there's a security breach, so just go down and sit where you are and wait for the next instructions. First time ever for that to happen to me. So I was a little scared, and everybody was scared, and we went down, I sat down. After 2 or 3 seconds, I looked around, and there were all ladies around me. Now, I was very near. I didn't choose it. It just happened. But I didn't mind it. And we were very near the exit. Very near the exit. And then slowly, all of these ladies who were visually older than me began to drift back. So they left me at
the front.
At the front.
They left the smallest guy.
At the very front. And then one of them asked me, almost subconsciously, what's going on? And I wondered, how am I supposed to know? I was with you here when the thing was announced. But it's just such, an instinct that just because I was a man there, everybody felt like you should be there to get harmed on our behalf, if necessary. And it's just a thing that happens. So for your daughter, you want to be there to watch over her and protect her and make sure no dude plays with her. That's why I have several dogs. But for your son, you want to say, let's go to war together. We're here to protect society and the rest.
Wow. Guy knows so much, he explains so much. Pastor S, I've been asking a question in this podcast. This series, Papa was a rolling stone. I've been asking a question. Are fathers important? I feel like we've been relegating the role of the father to one thing. Financial provision. Pesa. If the guy is not providing money, he's a deadbeat.
Yeah. Mwanaume ni pesa. Wallet.
Yeah. If the man is not financially stable, he doesn't seem to have a role in the home. Especially, we can debate about husband role, but for me, especially as a father, what is a father for?
Yeah. I think that's a very good question. We could talk for a long time. That's why I wrote that book. And I think we even need another one. But I'll say a few things, just quick ones, and then talk about the 5 Ps maybe at the end. But number one, fathers are a model of masculinity for their children, both male and female. My daughter told me the other day, Dad, I'm going to date someone who takes care of me like you do. She looks at me and says, this is a kind of a man I want to be. And that's what dads, you're the first man that she ever related with in a very altruistic way. You're not interested in anything. You're there for her and you're willing to die for her. And so she thinks, I want a guy like that. So I become a model of masculinity to her, but also to my son. My son keeps saying, I want to be like you, Dad, because you're the man that I relate with in this way. And I want to be a man like you. It's interesting. Many ladies actually marry their father in their guise. They look at, if they liked their dad, then they're going to look for someone like their dad, and one or two things. Interestingly, some even marry someone who might be an abuser or something else like their dad was. But it's just because you grew up in the presence of this man. It became the type of a man that you see every day and interact with, and it's easy for you to identify men out there who look like your dad, who behave like your dad, because you lived with your dad. He was there for a long time. But just model of masculinity, number one. But number two, fathers call out the man in a son. It's like my son doesn't feel like a man until I affirm him and tell him, this is who you are.
Do you know that is in contention?
Yeah.
It is in contention as we speak.
Yeah.
That men call out masculinity in men, in boys.
Yeah.
Women are asking why they can't do it.
They will do it, but they say it differently because of the psychological explanation I gave. I mean, from 0 to 8, and even there beyond, women have kept saying, oh, you're a good boy, you're this and the other. At that point, they need another voice to affirm what the mother has been saying. And it's a psychological thing. The window of 8 to 14, 15, it's a window that a male voice is very important to affirm what the mother has been saying. And it's not only the father, eventually it becomes the man in this guy's life. Starts with the father, then it goes to the man. There's something about men that they live for one another a lot more than they live for women. We want to impress women, but when another man challenges you, you're more likely to rise up to it than if a lady tells you something. Because the voice of a man shapes other men. And I think it's just the fathers. What we tell our sons are becoming. I mean, I told you how my father, like a prophet, told me, one day you can be a leader. And I became. My music teacher, after that hug, he said, you know you can be a lawyer. And I became because of him.
Wow.
Just the voice, the male voice that affirms you is very powerful for a son.
Can women raise men?
They can, but they will, and that's why we do Mothers of Sons as a program, because we are telling them this is how to talk to your son and do what you need to do. But there's a part that you will never be able. There's a gap of the male voice that you cannot be. Just like I cannot play the role of a mother to my children. They need to hear their mother, even when I say exactly the same thing. Their mother will say it in a different way, and they'll hear differently. So it's just the way we were created, that we need both voices to be able to rise up to psychological maturity. Otherwise, there'll be gaps in our lives. The same with ladies. They want to hear the voice of a man, especially their dad, affirm them in one way or another. That's why, again, girls get very broken if their fathers abandon them or tell them you're not beautiful or call them other names. Once I talked to some prostitutes in a controlled environment.
Hey, you guys, Pastor S.
There's
talks
journalist.
to prostitutes in a controlled environment.
Sex workers, and a journalist was asking them questions. So I said, can I ask them one question? Because I had asked this question many people, and it was coming out true. That what your father calls you, you're very likely to drift into it. And so I asked this, there were maybe about 20 of them. I asked them, how many of you, your father called you a prostitute? Or a sex worker? Or you know how fathers would say those days, or Malaya, toka hapa. And do you know what? 18 out of 20 raised their hands.
No way.
So there's something about a father's voice that makes you feel, my father thinks like that, then maybe I'm like that. My father thinks I'm irresponsible. You find yourself drifting into irresponsibility because of just the voice, the prophetic voice of a father. I mean, even whether you liked him or not, many of us, just the words our fathers told us, they stay with us for a long time. Why? Psychologically, we look up to our fathers to affirm us other than our mothers, because they have been affirming us for a while. So that period, psychologists call individuation. It's very hard to pronounce that as a Kamba. Becoming your own individual. That is the season where you need another voice other than mom to tell you who you are, because mom has been telling you.
Actually, Dr. Oscar has mentioned that individualism as a stage in a previous podcast. So you're saying fathers are there to affirm, to call out their sons.
Call out their sons,
call
and
out masculinity
even call out
sons.
the woman in a girl.
Okay.
It's interesting. If a woman is affirmed by their dad and told you're beautiful, they'll believe that a lot more than if their mother told them.
Wow.
Yeah, just because it's other than mom. Mom has been saying these things.
Yes.
Other than mom, a male voice has affirmed this. Interestingly, they say, a lot of research shows that a lot of women, girls who have not been affirmed by their dad are more likely to go into early sex. Because if they find then a dude who looks like a father, is a fatherly figure and tells them you're beautiful, they're willing to do anything for them. Because they've longed for that. They were waiting for another voice to affirm them.
You heard it from the expert. I won't even say any more because I'll spoil it. So he's there, he's affirming his children, he's calling out the masculinity from his children, the femininity, you say, even from the woman. The woman from his from
then
his
he's
daughter.
A model, and of course we talked about protection.
And then he's a protector as well.
There's a sense of security when dad is around.
Yes.
The children all over the world, even if the mother is a cop, just having a man in the house gives you a sense of security. And it's just the fact that men are considered to be protectors, and in fact women expect men to be like protectors, not just physically but psychologically as well. But the other thing is just the presence and playing around, because a mother will play with kids in a very safe way. In every way, biologically, psychologically, men are more risk takers. So I'm likely to throw my daughter up and up and down. I'm going to be rougher with her. I'm going to take her to places and push the boundaries a lot more than the mother. And so that's important, especially between 5 and 8. That's a time that kids are trying to go beyond the boundaries, and they need a father a lot more to help them with some of those things. So the way we play and just the presence together, the interaction is different from the other one, just because we are different with the mom. So the way even the way I talk to my daughter about sex and other things is going to be very different from the way the mother does. So just the social interaction is very important. That they interact with their mother, they interact with their dad. Then it brings an ability for them to interact well with men later in life, because they interacted with their father. So the presence is very important. Just being there and playing and talking and holding them and all of that. That brings a lot of health, psychological health to the children. But then the other one is also values. Culturally and spiritually, men really are custodians of value. It's interesting. Some mothers tell me, I don't understand this. I'll say something, and then the father will come and say, and now it's taken more seriously. And nobody taught them to discriminate. And it's not that. It's just that mom has been saying since when I was young. Now, dad, I'm a teenager. I'm trying to push away from mom, and dad says the same thing. So it just creates an affirmation of values. That's why we even say wahenga walisema. And it's mainly the elders who put these things together and then made a culture for the tribe. And now the tribe, and it's mainly men who are affirmed or punished against tribal cultures that were not followed. So there's an ability of a father then to be part of the values. As I talk to my son and my daughter, I'm giving values, I'm giving guidance, and they heard it from mom, but they want another to confirm as well. So just being like a priest, just being able to teach these values. It's interesting. They say if a child sees, especially in teenage, the father do something, they're more likely to follow it than if it was only mom doing it. Because at that point, again, daughters rebel against their moms during that season. They just want to push away anything feminine. Later they reconcile, but it's just a season of rebelling almost against your mom because they need a separation. If that separation doesn't happen, everybody will suffer in the future. The boy becomes mama's boy, and now the women don't want to marry him because he just wants to refer to the mom all the time. And the lady just becomes too soft if that separation doesn't happen. So it's a necessary psychological separation, and dad at that point, his voice becomes an affirmation of values to the children. So there's a lot that fathers do.
Wow. If you ever doubted the role of a father, you've heard a lot from Pastor S. I want to go back to something, and just something you mentioned, and I want to affirm it in a sense. I hear a lot of women nowadays talk about indecisive men. You know, they talk about indecisive men. Husbands or boyfriends, people who are not willing to take risks, who are not willing to sort of put themselves out there in terms of a decision.
Like to take initiative.
To take initiative in a sense. And, I think I'm able to trace it back, and we've had this conversation with you, to that stage of presence and fathers playing with their children.
Yeah.
Because fathers teach their children how to take risks.
Yeah.
And if they're able to take risks as children, that climbing the window, and a father is there to let him climb, as opposed to the mom who will tell him, get down, and bring him down to safety. But the father will probably let him climb to see how far he can go before he can hold him.
Yeah.
That thing that makes the child take risks is what later plays on when the child is making a business decision or is making a family decision in terms of do you find that to be true?
That's true. I was actually reading another book that was written just recently, studying brain psychology and brain science. And it was saying, is this not just a cultural thing in terms of women and men, some taking risks more than others? It's actually a play of the hormones. Testosterone is basically a risk taking, pushing you beyond the boundaries. Estrogen is more of
Safety.
nurturing and safety. That's why women worry more about their children, because they have just invested a lot more, and psychologically that's how they think. Safety. Men don't worry too much. Am I going to die before my son? Almost all women worry about that. It's just because they're just more invested in their children and all. So I would say that's true. I would say just the presence of a father in the child, whether it's female or male, just releases them to take more risk. They feel safer to do that. I mean, mothers would just feel, oh no, you're going to kill yourself.
Yeah.
And that telling you don't, actually has an impact on the child. But the father say, no, go and do this. Go and do. So it's interesting we say that when motherhood doesn't work well, we have hesitancy in relationships, being intimate. Pattern of relationships get affected. When fatherhood doesn't go well, we have a lot more hesitancy in performance. Going out there and saying, this is who we are, this is what we can do. And it's just because different contributions. Not better or who is better now. No, it's just we are different, and gender has different contributions to this thing called parenting. And so it's true. Just like, I do a lot of counseling. I have a lot of complaints from ladies about mama's boy. And whenever I talk to a mama's boy, and it sounds like a bad word, but it's someone who is so endeared to their mother because the separation never happened. Either because the dad wasn't there or the dad was too passive, that never invited the boy into himself, or the mother just insisted too much on the relationship, then they'll be very passive, and it's a woman who will be frustrated. Why can't he go and start a business? Why can't he get out? There's just a lot more security that he has because of being around mom for a long time.
Wow. Hey, and we haven't even started the podcast. Because I want to ask about father wounds.
Yeah.
Coming up on this episode.
Father wounds are really terrible. In fact, Amani, I am really worried about this issue, because we've done a bit of survey here and there, and it's less than 20% of the people say they have had a good father. Less than 20%.
This is Living Truthfully. I got an email yesterday that broke my heart. I want to read part of it to you. This lady, she titles the email Asante, and she talks about, how my podcast she's been listening to my podcast, and this is what she says. I'd like to thank you very deeply for having the courage to begin your podcast. As a woman who has experienced physical, emotional, and sexual abuse at the hands of different men, the first man to severely emotionally abuse me being my father. To be honest, the past few years have been very difficult for me in terms of finding space, empathy, and compassion for men in general. In the past 5 years, I've not made a single male friend, and it was only last year that I realized how far gone I was in terms of having faith that men are indeed worth the work. Now, she says some other things, but she says, men listening to other men being so vulnerable and giving of themselves has healed parts of me I didn't even realize were wounded and broken. I do know that I'm definitely not the target market, but thank you so much for restoring that faith in men that has been buried under the years of trauma and pain and hurt.
Yeah.
And she says, I called my father after about 20 years of not speaking to him.
Wow.
Thank you for giving me the courage to reach out, the courage to humanize him, the courage to hold space and empathy and compassion for him. She goes also to shout out my producer for the work that she's done. But this has affected how she relates with men. She actually does say that she's not romantically attracted to men. And so she has chosen an alternate lifestyle.
Yeah.
Let's talk about father wounds. Because this sounds to me like that.
Yeah. Father wounds can be deep because when as a young person you expect this person who is supposed to protect you and be there for you, and he takes off or he becomes an instrument of abuse, it hurts you very deeply. I think I've not seen something that, mother wounds are there, but father wounds, because fewer mothers would take off from their children or hurt them intentionally. It's just a little more difficult because of a mother instinct. Because, we don't have a father instinct.
We don't.
We're introduced to our children and then we trust they're our children. We believe it.
We believe that they are mine.
Yeah.
Actually, you're right, Bana.
Yeah, if you were not introduced, you wouldn't know.
That's true.
Unless you just see a familiar, forehead or something.
This is a problem right now.
But anyway, on a more serious note, father wounds are really terrible. In fact, Amani, I am really worried about this issue. Because we've done a bit of survey here and there, and it's less than 20% of the people say they have had a good father. Less than 20%. My staff team this morning, I was just asking the people, and I think it's only 2 out of almost 15 people would say, I'm so proud of my dad. The rest had issues with their dad. Some of them were absent. They were not just there. Some of them got to meet them like 15 years later, and the guy was just somewhere. Some of them are abusive, either sexually or physically or stuff like that. But this is what father wound does to you. It brings such a deep pain inside of you. It makes you distrust men. It makes you distrust male authority, not just men generally. It may be very difficult, like for that lady to relate with men romantically, but even men in authority, because you see your father replayed. Because this is the first man you met, and this is what he did to you. So men are like that out there. So it gives you a picture of how terrible masculinity is. So you either go out looking for men, the good part that you missed, or you just hate the man and begin
rejected completely.
Either to, there's a lady who was telling me she had slept with more men than she could count because she just wanted to punish them. Get them so close, get them intimate, and abandon them like the father abandoned them. And it was psychological until she realized what she was doing.
Wow.
So father wounds can be very deep and terrible. Part of it is father hunger if you never knew your dad. So you're hungry for someone who will be like a father. So you find yourself looking for that. I was talking to a lady 2 days ago who said, I've now realized I have a father hunger because I always date men older than me. And they always disappoint disappoint me like my father did. Like 10 years older or 15 years
far,
older.
much older than her.
Far much older. And it's a father I'm looking for. So there's a father hunger, or there's a reaction towards fathers because of what you went through. And I think what those wounds do, besides or beyond just making you either treat men badly or love men too much, and because you're looking for something you've never gotten, and over trusting them and just feeling like they are saviors. That's another thing we could do if we never got a father. But it stunts your growth because there's a gap inside of you. It affected me. After my father dying, I got to realize at some point that taking initiative was very hard for me. Being able to go out there, because my father suddenly left me and I felt like the rock of my life just crumbled right in my eyes. And I found it was very hard for me to take a step and do something that I needed to do. It made me passive because of that, because no one else then cheered me on after that. So father wounds.
I was going to ask you how it affects. You say in your book here that many of us fall into three groups in relation to fathering. You say we are either unfathered, underfathered, or misfathered. And you've explained that very well in relation to this lady who wrote to us, and how probably her misfathering, because that's what happened for her. As you were starting to speak, I was asking myself, how does this play on to the man? All right. So whether if I'm unfathered, if I'm misfathered, or if I'm underfathered, how does that show up in my life?
That's true. So for the women, it's how they relate to
the men,
either positively or negatively, or just don't want to relate to them, get distant. But for the men, it's the same thing, because we pass this on. Sometimes consciously, sometimes unconsciously. Like I struggled a lot to know how to relate closely to my children, because my father wasn't there to relate. So there are men who want to be close to their dads, but they feel distant. I have a friend of mine, and you know him, that tells me that I want to be close to my kids, but it's like there's an invisible wall in between me. And it's because my father fathered me and took off. I got to meet him because the mother was a teenage girl, and so when he realized he had done this, he said, "It's not me,"
disappeared,
and took off.
Wasn't me.
It wasn't me.
But 20 years later, he came back. So because of that gap, this guy finds it so hard to relate with children, just the way the father never related to him.
So he doesn't have a model.
You had a distant father, you become a distant father. You had an abusive father. Once in a while you find yourself like abusing your children, because it's like the default. It's what you know, is what you went through. Or you may go to the extreme where you want to compensate what you never got, so you become a spoiler to your children. Your father never allowed you to have any ice cream, now you want to buy ice cream all the time for your children. So it's like a compensation.
Children are constantly with sore throats because of your father wounds.
So you just want to compensate what you never got. You want to give it too much to your children. So it could either make you just like your dad. I mean, I know men who say, intentional dad program, I shout just like my dad. I hated it when he was doing it, but when push comes to shove, I find myself shouting exactly the same way. So either become your dad in some areas or in all of them, or you may find yourself then going to the opposite because you don't like him. And so one of the first topics we do is to tell the men, look at yourself in the mirror, look at your fatherhood experience, because it affects your fathering
man
experience.
In the mirror.
Yeah.
Wow. I have so many follow-up questions, but I feel like we need to move along.
I know I told you this is a topic we could talk for a day.
We could have an entire podcast series on just Pastor S and how we view fathers. I want to ask how we resolve this father wounds conversation, and maybe we can touch on it before I go to my next question. Because I don't feel like it's right to leave it hanging. You have this father wounds. You've been hurt by your dad, whether he's being absent or maybe some things he did right. Last week we had Tosh, and he who has had a great relationship with his father still had some things to resolve with him. How can I How can I resolve
Yeah.
my father wounds?
That's true. And because we're not perfect, I mean, my kids, I've written a book on fatherhood. I train on fatherhood, but I still know that I'm going to wound them in one way or another because I'm not perfect. I'm still learning in the job. And so one day they'll do a program and get healed.
They'll do your program and get
But it's not intentional. It's just I have gaps. They're going to show up in the way I parent because I'm still recovering. I'm not perfect. So I think it's to say, number one, identify and acknowledge the gaps. That I feel hurt by my dad because of this and that and that. Many people, when we talk about it, they say, no, I mean, I didn't expect much from my dad. I didn't get much. It's okay. That in itself is a wound. That you had no expectations. So the wound here is not just pain, is what you should have gotten that you never got. Is denial of something that you should have gotten. That hurts you in one way or another psychologically, even when you don't feel the pain. So it's just looking at your fatherhood experience, how you were fathered, and realizing the gaps, whether he was abusive or harsh or too high standards that you never got to please him. He was a trophy dad. He was only proud of you when you got a trophy. Whatever it is, just understand how he hurt you and wounded you. So acknowledge that. But number two, realize he's human. Whether he did it intentionally, it's probably only 10-15% of the dads who would say, let me just hurt this child.
Who are evil enough to say, I want to hurt my child.
I just want to make sure they'll never recover. They'll never do well. You've got to be evil to do that. The majority do it out of lack of understanding. Maybe they were just drunks and struggling with their own addictions, and then they hurt you, or they just didn't know better.
Or struggling with their own wounds. Of how they were fathered.
Yeah. I mean, I know my dad had issues, but he didn't have a dad. The dad died before he was born.
Oh, no.
And so he had his own challenges there. So just understanding that and then forgiving them. Instead of being bitter against them, forgive them. And I always say forgiveness is not a gift to the offender. You're not gifting your dad by forgiving him. You're gifting yourself because you have a right to be free. You don't have to carry this pain long after the fact. Who is benefiting out of that? It's crippling you. It's hurting you. Let it go so that you'll be free. So forgive. Let it go. That's part of your healing. And I think after letting it go, that gives you freedom. But then lastly, if he's alive and present, reach out for reconciliation. Reconciliation is a choice. It may bring a lot of goodness to you. I have seen many guys who have looked for their fathers and even just talking to them and realizing this is my dad and giving them a hug, even if it's not long-lived, it settled something psychologically. So the reconciliation is recommended. It's not a must. I mean, if he's dead and he's not in the jurisdiction, you cannot do much about it. But the forgiveness is a must. If you want some freedom and sanity in your life so that you don't repeat the cycle, then forgive. Then it releases you from having to repeat the patterns and also gives you some healing for your pain. But if you can reconcile, go for it. It just has a psychological effect, a healing effect, and a blessing. I mean, Peter, Mbevi is one of our friends, and he heard us talk about this. And when they looked for the dad, he didn't even know where he was. And eventually they reconnected. And he was saying that was the best gift before he could get married. Wow. That he saw his dad and they reconnected. And he said, I don't even want much. I saw him. I talked to him. That gave me just a confidence in life that I was ready to get married.
Actually, I had a friend who came in from the States the other day. Came to look for his dad after 18 years. You know, he'd not seen his dad in 18 years. He didn't know where he was. In fact, some friend in the States helped him trace his father. Traced him to Nakuru. And so he landed just to come and see his dad. So you're right. I just wonder, is there a 3-step process for reconciliation? Or, you know, do you have like, because I find it messy. And I find that reconciliation can sometimes have, the negative effects.
That's true.
What tips can you give me?
I think there's a lot we could say, but a few things I would say that don't force it if he's not ready. Try and reach out. If he doesn't want to do it, don't force it, because it will hurt you further, because you will feel rejected. So find out where he is, find out whether, reach out to him and see whether he's willing. If he's not willing, then don't push it. Wait until the right time if he's ever going to be willing. But secondly, if he's willing, there are times that you need maybe to go with someone else he respects, because a lot of fathers get scared. Are you coming to look for whatever mali that I have? Are you trying to fight for my, or claim inheritance? So a lot of them are very suspicious of what you want. But if you went with an uncle or someone else who is able to be a mediator and just say he just wants to know you, there's nothing much he wants out of it, that may even work better. So if possible, use mediation. Have someone else that he respects that comes along. And lastly, I would say, if you start off the first time and you don't feel like he wants more, again, don't push it. So just reconciliation is two people. It cannot be one-sided. So you do your part. If he's not pushing his part, take it slowly and don't break it apart because you were too anxious just to get this together.
And I want to add on to that and say, carry with you honor and respect.
That's right.
Carry with you honor and respect that at the end of the day, if you're looking for reconciliation, you must offer something. And I think the one thing that you have that you can offer is honor and respect to your dad.
That's a language of men. And if you go there just accusing them, then of course he doesn't want to see you again. So start with just honoring the little he did or did not do. Is your father, and then later you can bring up the beef and try to reconcile it. But that should not be what is the first thing that comes out of your mouth. So excellent.
I want us to go to two last things and then we can finish. First one is there such a thing as a father blessing? And is that thing important? Does it make a difference to have your father bless you? Or is it just a spiritual myth? Is it in the mythology of the Greek gods?
I think it's both spiritual and psychological because of what I said earlier, that further sort of introduce us to the world and affirm us. I mean, I've met some people who are married, they're good wives to their husbands and good mothers, but they still want to hear their dad say, "You're a good mother. I know you're going to do well there," because that voice is important. It's just a voice we cannot wish away. So I would say a father blessing is important. A father blessing involves three things, which are, in my opinion, the most basic psychological needs. Affection, that you want a dad just say, "I love you," or "I appreciate you." That's a blessing, by the way. When your dad tells you that and you've never had it, that's a blessing. And number two is acceptance. You're my daughter. You're my son.
Ownership, some sense of belonging.
A sense of belonging. I mean, we all want that. And we want to hear that from our dad. You're my son. And, whatever has happened in life, you're still my son. I think that's a word we wanted to hear, a statement we wanted to hear for a long time, especially when you did not get an A. Because every father wanted you to get an A. But you still want to hear, you're my child. And lastly, I'm proud of you. And affirmation. So 3 areas. Affection, acceptance, affirmation, and especially the affirmation. It's the greatest blessing you can get from your dad. Telling you, "I see you becoming this. I see this greatness in you." I mean, my daughter, I say a few things and she believes it. She could even die for it because dad said. So it's an amazing power that fathers have to affirm. And even traditionally, our fathers used to do that. We would kneel down, they would, take some milk and do that and just bless you and say, "May you have a good life. May you be this kind of a person. May you overcome all these things." I mean, traditionally it was there. Biblically it's there. So it's a cultural thing, it's a psychological thing, it's a spiritual thing. If you can get your dad just to bless you before he dies and say those words, I love you, I am proud of you for 1, 2, 3, and I see you becoming this. I mean, those words, you don't want to forget them in a hurry. It's interesting, in the Bible we see that father blessing, and what the fathers say to their children, they became, whether it was good or bad, because somehow the children believed in it and went for it. So a father blessing is a reality. So for the fathers who are listening, I would say do that regularly to your children. I mean, I love the Hebrews because they bless their children every morning and they tell them who they are and who they can become. Fathers, the world over, psychologically give identity. So the more that you tell your children, this is who you are, this is what you can become, they believe it. And it's like you're giving them a spirit to go out there and conquer. No wonder, a lot of them do very well because of that constant father blessing that they receive every day. So it's important. Fathers, give it this Father's Day to your children. Tell them who they are, what you see in them. Celebrate them for that. And those of us who have not been blessed, if your dad is still living, it's not a bad thing to go to them and say, Dad, would you just bless me? Tell me some words about what you see in me and what I'm becoming. Say them to me. I think that's a great blessing.
Wow. Hey, Pastor Simon, Sizzler, the man.
Well, Simon in itself. But yes, yeah.
In the background of the things that you've said,
you've
talked about how fathers affirm the good in children. And you've also said that in your statistics from your research, 80% of us were either unfathered, misfathered, or underfathered.
That's true.
Do you think this has affected how we are as a nation today?
Definitely.
And how we are, I'm saying the ills that we are seeing in society, the corruption that we are seeing in society. The one topic that I've avoided, which is femicide. I've completely avoided it in this podcast for many reasons. But how does fatherhood or the lack of fatherhood play in how we are as a society?
If there's something all sociologists agree and psychologists from both sides, there are those who say, it does in a big way. There are others who don't deny it does. They just say it's a multiplicity of factors. But all of them agree that lack of fatherhood affects not only the quality of affirmed gender in a society, but also the results. If you read from different, and I could quote different people who have published their findings, but generally they would say that if fathers are not involved with their children, and not only the children they have sired, but fathers in the society involved with children generally, this is what happens. Crime rates go higher. It's interesting that a lot of gangs, they are looking for fatherhood. Mungiki. I've talked to Mungiki people myself. Very few of them have a father. And when they see someone who is like their leader, who brings discipline and tells them who they are and helps them get bread, they see a father in them and they're willing to die for them. A lot of gangs all over the world, 90% of those gang members would be fatherless. They're looking for fatherhood. So crime rates increase. Early pregnancy does increase by 4 or 5 times. They even say suicide rates go up 3 or 4 times when fathers are not involved. There's something about a father in society that brings a stabilizing effect. We celebrate mothers because they start us off in life excellently. I mean, very few of us complain too much about our mothers. So mothers do a great job. That's why in Mother's Day, everybody buys card and stuff for their mothers. Father's Day, very few do.
Some people didn't even know that Father's Day was coming.
But it does affect the stability. In fact, a quote sociologist in the US who said, practically every socio-political, economic problem the world over has a bearing to fatherhood. So whether it's poverty rates, whether it's crime, whether it's suicide rates, whether it's violence in a nation. I mean, a country is only as safe as what the fathers in that country have made it. Because teenage boys especially listen to fathers. And in fact, they say if there's just a father in a neighborhood, teenage boys behave well. Even if he doesn't talk to them, they just see fatherhood around and they behave better. So for social, cultural, and psychological reasons, fatherhood brings stability, social stability to a nation. Even, in terms of political fatherhood, when you just feel like, Nelson Mandela, just as a political father, brought a stabilizing effect in the whole nation, just because of how he was revered, and he was seen as a father who is not out to milk the country, he's out to bless the country. That just brought something in the country that we still miss in South Africa since then.
And Africa all over, man.
Yeah. So I think, and that's why to me, Amani, and we're going to partner together even in this podcast, from this Father's Day to a Father's Day 3 years from now, we want as a community, as a Transform Nations, to partner with people to train 1 million fathers.
Wow.
1 million in Kenya only in the next 3 years to realize their position and to minimize their negative impact in the community. I believe that will change
1 million fathers.
1 million fathers. I think that will affect the way people see masculinity. It's going to affect the quality of femininity as well. It's going to affect a lot. Just the affirmation of fatherhood goes a very long way in touching on social, political, and economic stability.
Before I ask you my last question, how can we get involved in that project? How can people who are listening to this podcast get involved?
Transform Nations is our Transform-Nations is our website and Facebook as well.
Is that .com or .co.ke or .org?
.co.ke.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Transform-Nations.
But if you just type that, it will obviously come up.
You'll get it up.
But the details will be that, of course, those who are fathers, we want to be able to train you. So we have trainings that are going to be happening across the nation, from Moranga to Makueni to Westlands. But we're going to be doing these trainings, and we're going to be talking a lot more in the media, and just signing up and saying you want to be trained. But secondly, for those who are not fathers, especially the ladies are going to probably be some of our best partners in this, because they're passionate about it.
Yes.
Is to say, how do you get involved? Maybe sponsoring a father in Makueni and saying, with 1,000 to go and train a father there for 3 days or 1 full day for them to understand their role and get involved as a good father. So there's sponsorship, but also we are having schools. Like now we have a few schools who have said, we will partner as a school, we will train 100 fathers. Just come and teach us, give us the materials, we will train them. Or maybe as a church, some churches are adopting and say, us, we will train 2,000 by the time the period is over. Others 100, others this and the other. Organizations, like one of the organizations, corporate, they're saying we will train men in-house to be part of that. So it's to say we want to be part of it, either in being trained as a father or ensuring men in our
community, in our sphere of
area of influence are trained, or sponsoring and say we will give towards going to Moranga or going to Makueni, where I come from, or elsewhere to train some men. Or some want to be TOTs, want to be trainers. We'll train you, give you the material, go out and train.
People go find Transform Nations, Transform-Nations. Go find it on Facebook, go find it on the internet, on their website. Get in touch with them, get in touch with the team, and get involved in this 1 million father project. I love it so much. I love it so much. I want us to end, Pastor Sai, and you have to come back onto the podcast, Living Truthfully. But I want to ask you, it's Father's Day on Sunday.
Yeah, finally we're here.
Finally we're here.
So for everyone, remember, it's Father's Day this Sunday.
Do something for a father around you, please.
Yeah.
And if you don't have a father around you to do something for, my number is 0726. And it's my daughter's birthday actually on Sunday. So I'm blessed that it's Father's Day.
Double blessing.
Blessing.
Yeah.
What's your affirmation to fathers in Kenya, fathers listening, fathers in Africa, people listening to this podcast around the world? What's your affirmation to fathers?
I think my affirmation to tell them you're important. You play a significant role in the life of another. For you're a hero to a lot of people. You're your children's hero. They treasure you. They celebrate you. You may never know how much they look up to you. And so I just want to celebrate you and say you're a good dad by just being present, by just being a provider, by being a protector, even socially, not just physically, but socially, making sure that they are safe. In terms of morals, being a priest and teaching them the right values, being a prophet and calling them out and celebrating them and affirming them. You're a hero. Continue to do that and just realize it's probably the best thing you'll have done. Way after your corporate forgets you, your family will never forget you. So be a good dad. You're a good dad. I celebrate you. And I hope many will celebrate. Please make sure for one reason or another, even if it's not there, of course they're not perfect, celebrate your dad. Give them a call, write them a letter, take them out for lunch, give them a gift and make it practical. Most of them will not appreciate flowers, except a few. I think you will. But some of them would appreciate a BMW, or a watch or a phone or something else, but just something practical for them will really be a blessing. Let's celebrate fathers. What we celebrate multiplies.
You're a good father, Pastor Simon. And Pastor Simon tells you, who's listening, that you're a good father. You're already a good father. You can be a better father, but you're a good father. And he's told you, go and be present. He's told you, go be a priest, go be a prophet, go be a provider to your family. Pastor Simon says that, in fact, I feel like I'm playing Simon Says. So Simon says that if we fix fatherhood, we fix a nation. If we fix fatherhood, we fix the destiny of a whole generation. You're a dad out there, and I want you to know this Father's Day that you're important. I want you to know that your gift was not just seed, that your gift was life. And it is a gift that keeps giving. And you have the opportunity to keep giving that gift of life. So don't stop, don't relent, don't give up, don't be discouraged. You're a good man, you're a good father. And for all you fathers out there, happy Father's Day.
Sam, happy Father's Day.
A son rarely tells his father how he really feels. A handshake or a pat on the back is all that he reveals. I'd like to right that wrong here in this little song. Thank you for shaping my life. Thank you for teaching me all you can. You are no ordinary man. No, no, no. You make me everything I am. Thank you for taking the time. Thank you for showing me the way. And thank you for being there when I need you. Thank you for every single day. Now I've been blessed with a son of my own. Got my own bedtime stories to tell. If I can raise him half as well as you raised me, guess I'll be doing pretty well. Thank you for your guiding hand. Thank you for making my dreams come true. You're an extraordinary man, and I hope you're as proud of me as I am proud of you. Thank you for giving me life. Thank you wrong bad. I guess I'm only really trying to say thank you for being my dad. Even though the years drift away, I never took the time just to say I love you, and I always have.